Okay, so I'm live here with 52 weeks of live coding in MLOps. And one of the things that I'm going to cover today is going back into Vertex AI. One of the interesting thing about doing live streamings is that you never know what's going to happen. A lot of times you're successful, a lot of times you're failing. Last week I had some weird hyperparameter like payload issues. And so I'm going to take a different tack this week, and I'm just going to go right into my GCP account itself, and I'm going to look at the documentation and see if I can just bypass this Quick Labs tutorial and just go right into my own account. So in order to do that, I'm going to go through here. I'm going to share my screen and just kind of get this thing set up here real quick. So let's make this nice and big. Great. Okay, so I think probably a good place to start off with would be, a hello world kind of tutorial. So we got hello image data. Let's try it out. And in this case, it says for step-by-step guidance, click guide me. So we want to say, set up a project, create image classification, train a model, deploy it, and then clean up your project. Okay, so first step, we're going to go to the project selector. Let's go here. And we want to select this one, which I think has my credits, and we want to check if billing is enabled for the project, which is good. So how do we do this? We can say the project is billing. I'm pretty sure I have billing enabled, so too much to read. I'm already bored. So next step, enable the API, and I click that button. Yes, we do. We want to enable it. Great. Okay. Perfect. And now we want to create a service account. Let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to create a service account. And let's see, in the service name, enter name, it fills in an ID. So we'll just call this kicking tires. Kicking tires. There we go. Hello image, service account for Vertex. There we go. Create and continue. And now, what do we want me to do? Service account for quick start, create and continue. So grant the following. We want to do project owner. Okay, so we'll say projects currently used. So select a role. Owner. There we go. And we say anything else. So we want to go through here, project owner, and select a role. Select a role. For each additional role, you can revoke. Do not grant instead. Okay, so we did that. So we were able to create that. Continue. And we're done. Okay, so we got that done. And now we want to create a service account key. So we say click keys, add key, create new key. So in the console, click the email address for the account that you created, which is this one. And we want to go to keys. And we say add key, create new key. And we want to do a JSON key. All right. Close. Okay, so we have some keys here that are probably being exposed, which is awesome. And we want to set this Google application credentials to the path of the file. And so we want to do that. So I guess I can just open up the Cloud Shell environment here, authorize this thing. And sure, let's create the profile. Okay, dismiss, launch, and we're gonna upload this. So we want to go to upload. We're going to choose this file. Then we're going to go to downloads. There we go. Perfect. Upload it. That looks good. And if I ls-l this thing, we're going to export this here. Export that equals. And we'll put this path inside. Perfect. Go. Got it. Okay, next step, create an image, a data set, create an image classification data set and import images. So the next thing that we'll do is we're going to use the flower data set, which I've definitely used before. These are all in this bucket. And so in order to do that, you can see these are the CSV files that we're gonna play around with. And so from the get started Vertex AI page, we're going to click on create data sets. Okay, so let's go over to here and we'll go over to Vertex AI. Let's look at the Vertex AI here. Vertex AI data sets. We're going to create a data set. And do they recommend? Yeah, we'll leave it generic there. We're going to do image classification single label and US Central. So single label, US Central, perfect. Okay, that looks like it's working. Okay, and while that's working, we're going to select import from cloud storage. And the CSV file is here, so copy and paste the following into the import file path field. Okay, that looks good. We're going to upload import files. So we're going to put in the CSV file. Yep, which I've done before in the past, actually. And we're going to select defaults and we'll do continue. And this will actually import this data. Yeah, so this is kind of old school. This is how actually the AutoML system used to work. And so they've merged all this stuff inside of the Vertex AI. So I mean, I've actually done, I can't even tell you how many demos of doing Vertex of the AutoML system. Now the problem with this, if they haven't changed it, is the import process takes a long time typically, unless they've sped it up. But let's actually assume that it'll eventually get finished. The first thing you want to do is just look at the images. And so this is kind of a cool thing that this AutoML system has. And let me see, do I have, nope, I don't have any other data sets. I used to have data sets loaded here, but one of the nice things about the data set visualization tool is it shows you like things like how many images you have and what are the labels and that kind of stuff. And then when you're done, all you have to do is just click this, go to models and select, in this case, a AutoML training job. Now the AutoML edge job is actually pretty cool because this will give you the ability to download the model and actually put it into, let's say, a Coral device, like a Coral TPU or your phone or something like that. The AutoML is, I believe, only online based. And so it'll give you like an online endpoint. So this may take a while, but this is what the interface looks like. It'll say all, and look at labeled, unlabeled. and then give us access to all of these different things. So here we go. We see all these inside of here. Perfect. And really, in this case, specify a budget of 8 node hours and start training. Now, look, the training takes several hours. So this might be a good place to stop, actually, because I kind of know what's going to happen at the end here. So I guess the main takeaway here is that if you want to do an AutoML, it used to be called AutoML. It's now just part of Vertex AI. So what else can I learn about Vertex AI? Because I already knew this part. If we go back to the guides here, we can look at all the intro documentation, and let's go back to the very, very beginning here. And so here we go, train models. So AutoML is definitely one. I don't know if this is that compelling, to be honest, the AutoML capabilities. Some of these other things look more interesting. So, for example, MLOps pipelines, I think, are a little more interesting to me. And if we look at the documentation, we might be able to find some other documentation examples. So we have introduction to the platform. You pull in your data, you train your model, data labeling service. So yeah, there's some interesting things here. Maybe the ML workflow would be another one. Training and predicting with TensorFlow could be a good one to play around with. So we'd say set up your local environment, set up a project, Cloud SDK, authorize it, create a storage bucket, quick start for training. You clone the project, train the model locally. So you train it locally. You do a quick data set. That's interesting. So I guess I wonder where they would want you to run this. Would they want you to run this in a cloud shell or on your desktop? And then it says train it using AI platform. So you submit the job, and so you'd submit a job like this, and then it would export this to the cloud-based system. You could tell it to do automatic hyperparameter tuning, which is actually pretty cool. Let's see, where do you specify that? That is under config hyper tuning config.yaml. So where do we find that file? Oh, this is optional. They don't give you. We can look at the documentation for that. Let's see here. So this does look interesting, that you can configure the hyperparameters. So these are some of the things you can pick. You can do algorithm unspecified. So we just kind of pick one for you, I believe. Grid search, which basically is just linear, right? Like you just go through and try every possible combination, and then random. Probably either Bayesian or random is probably the way to go, so that you don't blow up a lot of credits on it. And then also this shows you how to do some hyperparameter train jobs. So definitely pretty interesting. Here's I guess an example configuration file that goes through and shows you some of the different things that you could do inside of your hyperparameter tuning job. So it definitely interesting. So, I mean, I like this style. Like, I mean, it's basically without using the GUI, you would go through and do this. You then export the model after you trained it. And then when you want to create a model version, you would actually version it. Then if you want to do inference, then you would actually do batch-based inference first, right? So this is not an online version of the model, but what's nice though, that you can actually import it. You can pull in pandas and play around with it as well. And let's see. Oh, I see. And you can also use the cloud to now create an online prediction request. And so this is where I believe Vertex AI would come into play here. And then you deploy the version, you release, and the next section would be creating Keras code to train the model. So then this shows you through how to actually train the model we do all this, pre-process the data, and then finally, at the very end here, you would design a neural network. You would train it using TensorBoard, which is good. You would fit it. You would visualize the training. You export the model for serving. Okay, let's double check. How do you export here? So we have tf contrib. Okay, so you just exported via tf contrib.save model, .save keras model, and then that's it. And then you would clean up the resources, and then you would, I see, this is like model versioning, model resource, the cloud storage objects, the training job, if you're running for it. It's interesting. I mean, yeah, it seems like there's some good tools here for using Vertex AI, and worth playing around with a little bit, especially if you're doing TensorFlow. I could see how the workflows they recommend make a lot of sense. Now, I would guess this particular tutorial, where would you run this? I think you would want to run this most likely on a virtual machine, right? Let's double check what they recommend. So they say AI platform, but set up your local development environment. So this is kind of interesting that they don't point you towards like using a Google virtual machine. So I'm curious why they don't do that. Like, why would you want to run this on your local machine? Why wouldn't you just run it either in Google Cloud Shell, like right here, or why wouldn't you want to run it in a virtual machine versus your local machine? Who knows, right? Like what kind of issues that you have. So interesting stuff here. If you want to play around with data sets here, you can see this is still importing. I think this is from a long time ago. You can see a previous one I imported, right, where I did cats and dogs, and it'll show the different, labels and everything. And I trained a model, I think, using the AutoML system, and so you can see it's got some pretty good, tools to show you what's happening with it. And then if you wanted to deploy it, you could actually use an edge-based model and export this via TF Lite, or build this for edge-based TPU, which uses like the Coral device, which I have one of those. Put in a container, or put it into a like an iOS based model. So there's some interesting things here for sure with Vertex AI. It seems like they're kind of repackaging stuff they already had. It's tough to know without diving more into here every single thing that they've got. I think I'm going to take a break for this probably, and I'm going to hop onto a new topic, maybe go back to Hugging Face a little bit next week. But it was interesting to play around with this a little bit. Well, thank you everybody that showed up. I'll see you next week. I'll probably dive into some Hugging Face.